He went around dispensing gratuitous advice, and they poisoned him.
You are set to master 54 words today through this speech. The list includes advanced English words such as gratuitous, convoluted, ambit, heralded, portentous, exhortation, comeuppance, jagged, and others, as well as intermediate-level vocabulary like impoverished, redemption, bequeathed, dispense, absurdity, affluent, resounding, embrace, and more. Also, you'll encounter some interesting phrases such as grapple with, around the corner, and make a dent. Each word or phrase comes with a simple, easy-to-understand explanation. Time codes are provided in the description for each word in case you'd like to focus on specific meanings. However, I recommend watching the entire video for two key reasons. 1. To understand the contextual usage of each word. 2. To enhance your long-term memory of the words. The most exciting part is the fun quiz at the end of the video. It's a great way to check whether you've truly grasped the new vocabulary. Let's dive in.
Dean Kite, Dr. Tarlow, Dean Gallagher, Dean Blanco, Captain Gagliano, members of the class of 2022, 2021, and 2020, proud families, friends, and guests. First of all, I must tell you I'm delighted to be here on what by Mumbai, India standards is a wonderfully cool and pleasant afternoon. And I want to thank you, Rachel, for that glowing introduction. I have to admit, whenever I receive such a glowing introduction, I'm always reminded of a not so memorable introduction when many years ago somebody obviously wanted to say Mr. Mahindra needs no introduction. What he did end up saying was the less said the better about Mr. Mahindra. But I come to Fletcher primarily as a pilgrim. I come to retrace the steps of my father, who, as Rachel mentioned, 76 years ago passed through the portals of this great institution. He was a member of the class of 46 and, as she said, the first Indian student to attend the Fletcher School. So you can imagine the pride I feel to be treading the grounds where he once walked, to be part of the graduation exercises that for him in his time embodied all his hopes and dreams for the future. And I'm terribly embarrassed to say this is the first time I'm in Fletcher, indeed at Medford. The closest I ever got to Fletcher or Tufts was when, as an impoverished scholarship student at Harvard, I would go to Chinatown to get the finest and cheapest dental service by the Tufts University Dental School. There's another member of the class of 46 who would have been equally pleased at seeing me on this campus. And that's the late Frederick Irving, my father's best friend at Fletcher. Uncle Fred, as we referred to him, enjoyed a distinguished career as the United States ambassador to Iceland and to Jamaica. And to the end of his days, my father used to keep a framed photograph by his bedside, which was a picture taken at Uncle Fred's wedding. And in the photograph, standing next to Uncle Fred as his best man, is my father. Their friendship lasted their entire lives, and it's been bequeathed to two subsequent generations. In fact, Uncle Fred's grandson on his farm in Massachusetts drives a Mahindra tractor. I'm particularly delighted that some of Uncle Fred's family members, his son Rick and his daughter-in-law Geeta, are here with us today in honor of our shared memories. Thank you. I hope all of you graduating today would also have formed such friendships during your time here. Friendships forged at the greenhouse, perhaps, or at the Mugar Cafe, or through a common affection for the Flecheros, maybe. I hope those friendships in some small way will help to unite the world, just as my father and Uncle Fred did. On a lighthearted note, I must share that I'm part of the undergraduate class of 77 at Harvard, and many years ago, my daughters asked me whether there was anyone in my class who was really now famous. And very excitedly, I said, yes, Bill Gates was in my year. At which they quickly pointed out, in their typically teasing manner, and said, Dad, in that case, you might as well just give up and retire now. So today is a moment of redemption for me, frankly, because I know that my father would have believed that despite whatever else I may have achieved, being invited to speak at Fletcher's class day is my finest hour. Now, I'm not the usual suspect class day speaker for sure. I come from another profession, the often undiplomatic world of commerce. I come from halfway around the world. I'm not an alumnus. But when I asked Dean Kite, she said the reasons for which they invited me were, in fact, all of the above. But I'm not here to try and dispense any unique wisdom. As the proverbial schoolgirl wrote, Socrates was a wise Greek philosopher, and he went around dispensing gratuitous advice, and they poisoned him. So I deeply fear that fate. So what I will do is to just throw some ideas at you based on my own life experience and my own world that I hope will be relevant to any profession and to every life. Now picture, if you will, the world in 1946 when my father stood here. The Second World War had just ended. Independence for India was just around the corner, as Rachel mentioned. The beginning of the end of colonialism was in sight. And details of the full extent of the death and the destruction and the horrors of the Holocaust of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were just emerging. The problems of peace were every bit as convoluted as the problems of war. And to my father in 1946, the world must have looked hopeful, but immensely complicated. And yet I wonder what my father would say about the world as we see it today. We are wrestling with climate change, pandemics, terrorism, energy crises, social inequities, to name just a few. And because of their trans-border impact, these issues too now fall within the ambit of diplomacy, of international affairs, of international law. And what would my father have made of the impact of technology? In many cowboy movies, the appearance of the hero or villain is often preceded by his shadow. We now have a new cowboy in town, heralded by a lengthening shadow, the shadow of the Metaverse. Entrepreneurs are buying up real estate on it. Countries are opening up virtual embassies in it. And through the Metaverse, we can live not just a virtual second life, but also a parallel life where the virtual intersects with reality and the boundaries between the two grow more and more blurred. Now, in many ways, it may actually enhance the effectiveness of diplomacy. Virtual face-to-face negotiations may become as effective as in-person ones. Global summits, and indeed side conversations where you can interact virtually, where you can smell the coffee almost, can lead to both quicker responses and actually make a dent in climate change. On the other hand, the Metaverse is likely to turn out to be the new Wild West. What laws will govern it? Who will have jurisdiction and over what? Who will own the new forms of data that the Metaverse is going to generate? Pupil dilation, heartbeat rates, biometric data. What happens to free speech and to privacy? The Metaverse, and indeed the technology-driven world of the future, is going to be like the Force, from Star Wars, of course. But as all of you know, by itself, the Force is neither good nor bad. It depends on who uses it and towards what end. So these are all the portentous issues that your generation will have to grapple with. But yours is not the usual graduating class. You have all experienced the disruption caused by COVID. You witness the absurdity of a brutal war taking place in the 21st century between affluent nations. You're seeing a world where few leaders are true or permanent role models. And in such a situation, where there seems to be no certainty but only shades of gray, how does it make sense for me to tell you to go out into the world holding fast to your ideals? But my answer to that would be a resounding yes, because it may, in fact, be the only way to make sense of a world in which the ground under your feet feels like quicksand. And because all of you are in a unique position to apply those ideals to your work right away, because you've all taken a decision to follow a career path that is going to have a wider impact on global issues than almost any other career. So my first exhortation to you would be to embrace the ought, not the is. Shape the world as it ought to be, rather than accepting it as it is. And human beings have never stopped aspiring to this ideal, no matter how messy the reality may be. And that's why the whole world loves it when David beats Goliath, when the good guy wins and the bad guy gets his comeuppance. May not always work that way in real life, but that's how we, as human beings, want it to be. And we make heroes out of those who make that happen. Yet in a jagged and a paradoxical, often brutal world, how can you hold fast to that ideal, to the ought? And that's where I think the centrality of purpose comes in. Cynics scoff at phrases like the power of purpose, but I have to tell you, in my experience, it works. Let me share the story of my own business. Mahindra and Mahindra was founded by two brothers, as Rachel mentioned, around the time of independence. It was a time when Indian industry was practically non-existent, and many people, most notably Winston Churchill, did not expect India to survive or to be able to mold itself into a viable country. And we Indians begged to disagree.
Congratulations! You've just completed watching part 1 of Anand Mahindra's speech at Fletcher and learned 54 new words. Now it's time for a fun quiz. Here's how it works. All the questions will be multiple choice MCQs. Pick the correct answer and see how well you score. Let's begin. Question 1. A convoluted explanation is A. Simple and easy to understand. B. Complicated and difficult to follow. C. Extremely brief and concise. The correct answer is B. Complicated and difficult to follow. Question 2. An alumnus is a person who A. Has graduated from a particular school or university. B. Is currently enrolled in a university. C. Teaches at a university. The right option is A. Has graduated from a particular school or university. Question 3. The hiker carefully climbed the dash rocks to reach the summit. A. Jagged. B. Gratuitous. C. Viable. The answer is A. Jagged. Question 4. If someone gets their comeuppance, they are rewarded for their efforts. It's false. It means they receive the punishment or fate they deserve. Question 5. A viable plan is A. Impossible to carry out. B. Practical and capable of working successfully. C. Unnecessarily risky and complex. You guessed it right if you chose B. Practical and capable of working successfully. Question 6. The machine can blank coffee and snacks with just a push of a button. A. Embody. B. Dispense. C. Precede. The correct option is B. Dispense. Question 7. A cynic is someone who A. Doubts the sincerity or goodness of others. B. Believes strongly in the power of kindness. C. Avoids forming opinions about people. That's correct. It's A. Doubts the sincerity or goodness of others. Question 8. Bequeathed means to leave something as part of an inheritance. It's true. Question 9. To be preceded means to A. Follow after something else. B. Stop something abruptly. C. Come before something else. The right option is C. Come before something else. Question 10. The term impoverished describes a person or place lacking wealth or resources. It's true. Great job. Let me know your score out of 10 in the comments.